on Scoop City, let's welcome in our national features writer at The Athletic, someone I have wanted to have on the show all season long, but I couldn't figure out the right time, and now the time has presented itself. Zach Keefer, what's up? Welcome to Scoop City. Do you feel like the season is flying or moving slow? Because we debate this all the time on the show.
I feel like it's flying. What are we, week 14? I feel honored to be on one of my favorite podcasts. I want to say longtime listener, even though you guys have only been doing this for 3 or 4 months. But that seems like a long time, right? 4 months? We're already into December and we already got playoff
Oh,
scenarios.
It's a long time with Diana. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Chase and my husband, Kevin, feel the same way about everything. Spending any time with me ages you and feels like a century. So we appreciate you checking out the show, though. And I wanted you on for a lot of different reasons because I value your opinion, your information, even just all the people that you talk to around the league. But whenever I see anything involving Andrew Luck, especially because you did that incredible 6-part podcast series called The Luck on the quarterback's football career and abrupt retirement, if you haven't checked that out, it is a must listen to podcast series. I think there's a lot of people right now looking for shows on Netflix. Forget Netflix. Check out this podcast. It's so well done. So now that we see that Luck is serving as the general manager of the Stanford football team, what was your reaction to hearing that he's coming back to football in a way?
I love that I'm the Andrew Luck guy. You don't pick these paths, but they pick you, I guess. To answer your question, Diana, I wasn't surprised at all, and here's why. He loves Stanford. Right? I mean, he loves Stanford. His wife, Nicole, she was a gymnast there. They met there. Stanford has always been a very special place to him. He's getting his master's in education there right now. They moved from Indianapolis to Stanford to Palo Alto a couple of years ago. And the second part that didn't surprise me is this guy's been looking for a challenge since he stopped playing, right? August of 2019, he stunned the world. You guys probably remember where you were. Certainly remember where I was. Everybody in this city where I live.
I was on the field, dude. I was on the field.
Yeah, Chase was playing in the game.
Just so you know.
In that game in Indy.
So you heard the boos.
Yes, dude.
Oh, my
I was on the
gracious.
field when we were starting to go in the game, and halfway through the game, everyone's looking at their phone, and we're like, what? Are we playing that bad? And he's walking off the field at halftime, and the news had broke, which I think is absurd, by the way. And I was literally on the other, I'm like, what's happening? And we figured out, I checked my phone at halftime, I'm like, he just retired. Oh, my gosh. It was wild.
Colts players were getting shouted at by the fans in the stands. The fans are saying, is he retiring? Yeah. And they're like, no, because they didn't even know. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever have a scene that surreal in the league. I mean, that was just bizarre.
Yeah, I remember I was in the basement of this bar in Philly, and I just met my now husband's friends for the first time, and I was so rude because I was like, gotta go.
Yeah,
and I remember running out of the bar and just getting on the phone. And but also feeling this emotional reaction that I don't normally feel when I cover football. I usually can separate myself, but it felt scary, surprising, weird, all those feelings, which I'm sure for you too. Were you there, Zach?
I was talking to a Colts scout at that very moment, and we got the news, and they looked at me and said, "That's not real. That can't be real." They didn't even know, and I knew in a matter of seconds that everything in my world as a Colts beat reporter, everything was changing. But to kind of piggyback on what we were talking a minute ago, he's been looking for a challenge since he stopped playing football. He would walk around his house the first couple of years and say, I'm 30 years old. I can't be retired. This is the smartest guy I've probably ever been around in the NFL, and that includes executives and coaches and players. He needed another step, and I think this is going to be really cool. It's sort of a new frontier in college football. But I think he's been looking for something like this, and the fact that it's at Stanford just fits perfectly with his personality.
That was my next question because, you talk about the new frontier, NIL. Is there going to be legislation? Is there not? You see, and I've talked to the University of Missouri head coach, Eli Drinkowitz, about what this next decade or so, or next 5 years or so looks like in college football. And he mentioned to me, they have not hired it, but they mentioned to me general managers. And I'm like, okay, well, is that a salary cap guy? What do you need to be a general? Can you just sort of dive in what you think his job description and title will be? Because I've seen some stuff online, but I'm just not sure.
I think he's going to be, for starters, when you can go out and get maybe the most famous alumni you have, short of John Elway, he's going to be a huge asset for them, right? You need that. This team has won 3 games each of the last 3 years. They're not what they once were. And he's proud of that school. I mean, he said in his statement, I'm proud to be the president of Nerd Nation. That is the most Andrew Luck thing I've ever heard. So yeah, to answer your question, Chase, everything, recruiting, You talk about the salary cap, like, yeah, the NIL money, they're going to have a certain amount and they're going to have to delegate that in certain ways. And he's going to work in concert with the head coach that he helped hire. He was on the hiring committee and sort of figure out where that money goes. But like, does anybody know? Like, this is like the wild, wild west right now. There's no salary cap. There's a ton of money being poured in. Teams are getting $20 million quarterbacks coming out of high school. I think to have a guy to oversee that is a weapon in a way for this college football situation. But man, I think a lot of teams are going to copy what the Stanford Cardinal are doing. I think a lot of teams are going to go out and find someone. They might not find an Andrew Luck, but maybe a former player who wants to get his hands in the program in a different way that's not coaching. Andrew was never going to coach. They're going to go try and find their version of Andrew Luck for this nebulous role that's going to be really hands in everything in the program.
You actually said the mascot correctly. You did not add an S to the end of Cardinal, and I just congratulate you for that because so many people, there's only like 8 mascots that don't end in an S. I'm not going to ask you them because I don't know them, but Cardinal is one of them. So good job, man.
Man, if I spoke wrong, if I had bad grammar when I was asking Andrew
this
Luck
man
a
brings
question,
all this brilliance to the show, and that
back then I would get corrected. So like this was stuff he cared about. So yeah, we learned the hard way when we screwed up.
Yes, Diana, that was my takeaway.
It's amazing. He told our friend Dan Patrick recently that he felt like he lost his identity when he stepped away from football. And I always wondered, did he ever get close to coming back? Did he ever sit there and go, all right, I want back in? Or, he sees Tom Brady do what he did. He's watching Patrick Mahomes light up the league. Did you ever hear of him toying with that idea again over the years? Or has it always just been, I'm done?
Yeah, that's a good question. I asked this directly to him. We got coffee a couple years ago, and he joked about playing until he was 40. Brady was still playing. Aaron Rodgers were still playing at a high level. And I said, you were never going to play until 40. And he laughed, as in like an acknowledgement. Like, no, I was never going to play until 40. No, he never thought about coming back. Now, the idea was presented to him. The Colts were kind of like, hey, if you ever change your mind, the locker is still yours. You can come back in. And his teammates have told me, like, if there's ever been a guy that could just show up to an NFL facility tomorrow and be ready to play at that position, he could do it. But Andrew, he told me this last spring. He said, when I closed the door on football, it was done in my mind. Playing was not going to happen again. He's a very resolute guy. When he decided that, he wasn't going to go back. And sure, the idea entered his mind for maybe like 10 to 15 seconds. But going back to the game and doing everything it would take to get back to be ready for Sundays was not something he seriously considered. It just adds to another layer to just how unique this guy. I think he's the most unique guy I've ever covered in the league.
So he also said that, and I thought this was the most interesting thing of the conversation during the Dan Patrick interview. I'm sure you watched the whole thing. That when he retired, and I sort of tend to agree with him, that part of his identity died, right? When you're doing that podcast and you're getting stuff ready, how does that fit with how he is as a person? Because for me and many like guys that just go football, it's our whole identity. His answer was fascinating because it didn't seem like it was his whole identity.
Right. That's why he was so unique, right? Like, it wasn't just like the flip phone, but he like did actually have a flip phone. And his teammates would send him pictures, and he couldn't even open up the pictures on the phone. He was just different in every single way. He almost seemed immune to money. Like, he had a ton of it, but he never... he would wear these ratty old T-shirts everywhere and just was like, what are you doing? You have $100 million in the bank. But to speak to your point, Chase, like he wasn't enamored with being in the NFL. And I always put it this way. This is what Matt Hasselbeck told me. Like, a lot of guys love being in the NFL. Not a lot of them just love football. Andrew was the latter. He just loved football. So, yeah, he did lose a part of himself. And the way it was described to me from people around him was he was lost. He was lost in 2020 and 2021. Remember, he retired and then COVID happened a couple of years ago. So he was a stay-at-home dad for a while. He would cook, he would raise his daughters, and his wife is, a television producer for NBC. They went to the Olympics this year. She does a lot of the gymnastics work. So he was really a stay-at-home dad. Could you imagine like 2 jobs that could be more different? Face of an NFL franchise, stay-at-home dad. Now, he went to Spain and he learned to surf. He was skiing in Colorado for weeks at a time. He did a bunch of stuff. He read books, but he was looking for something. And with football pulled out of his life, once he was able to step back, he kind of told himself, I should give back to the game. So to your point, Diana, no, he wasn't going to go play again, but he started to coach. He started to volunteer at this high school out in Palo Alto. He didn't take any money from the team, but he was just a volunteer quarterback coach, maybe the most overqualified volunteer quarterback coach in the history of high school football in Colorado. But I knew something like this was coming. I knew something big was coming. He wanted to dive into something big. This will scratch his football itch. And the one thing that's surprising to me is I asked him this, are you ever mad at football? Did you ever get mad at the game? Because remember the injury list this guy had. I mean, his kidney was ripped open. His throwing shoulder was torn off. Like, he had all these surgeries. He was beat to hell. Really, he was beat to hell at the end of his career. Like, why didn't you get mad at football? You didn't even get to see your 8th season. Like, you could still be playing right now and playing at a really high level. And he wouldn't go there. He just said he just has appreciation for it, for the situations it put him in, for the people he met, for how it helped him grow as a person. And I just kept saying, this guy is just so unique. I just can't believe he looks at it that way.
He's so unique, yet at the same time on this show, Zach, as you know, we talk a lot about being a parent, and it just goes to show you, staying at home with your kids is harder than playing football. He's now back in the game of football.
You said the same thing.
But just...
Kids are harder, bro. Not even close.
It's unbelievable that it does not matter. It's tough on everyone. But I do think this entire journey has been so inspiring in its own way, and also really honest. And he's been pretty transparent, I think, with everybody about it. Despite the world not understanding him, he always just stuck with what he believed was true to his heart, his soul, and what he wanted to do. So I will always respect his decision and his belief in who he is and understanding of who he is. But that being said, the Colts have not been the same. They are not the same team without Andrew Luck. What do you make, just kind of a big picture of this Colts team? You don't cover them day to day like you once did. What do you make of them?
They're still stuck in this cycle, right? I think they found something in Anthony Richardson post-benching, but they still seem stuck in this cycle, and that's the vibe around this city is like they were so fortunate and so blessed and so lucky to have Peyton Manning and then just bridge right into Andrew Luck. You go from Super Bowl contender every year to playoff contender and maybe Super Bowl contender with Luck early in his career. And now they're just in this abyss that so many teams go through, right? When you don't have the guy. This is what Cleveland went through for so long, and the Bears and all that. You guys know this stuff. And it's really weird for the city to not have that. I mean, they've had 10 starting quarterbacks since Luck retired 5 years ago. 5 of them have been like full season starters. But this season's been weird. The city's really rallied around Anthony Richardson. They want this guy to be the guy. It's been strange. Everybody was really mad at Shane Steichen for the benching. My understanding is that was absolutely a Shane Steichen call. That was not a Jim Irsay call, and Jim Irsay's had his hand in some quarterback decisions in the past. He's played better, but again, let's temper it. Richardson has certainly played better, but they beat the Jets and the Patriots. They're 2-1 since he came back from the benching. The Jets and the Patriots are 2 of the worst teams in the league. I'm really not sure where this team goes at the end of the season. Does Chris Ballard come back as general manager? Jim Irsay really likes Chris Ballard, and he really believes in his ability to draft talent. There is talent on the roster, but this is the team that hasn't won the division in a decade. A decade. And with the players on this team, it just doesn't add up.
Let's talk about some more bigger picture things. And I know Journalism 101 says I'm not supposed to ask 2 questions at the same time. But we don't do Journalism 101 right here. It's a podcast.
I do it all
I'm going
the
to
time,
ask you about the
He
MVP
teaches journalism.
race.
He knows.
You do? Yeah, sorry. Luckily, there's not 3. I had 3 in mind. I'm like, let's just stick with 2. The first one, the MVP race. Who is your favorite to win the MVP? And the second one, which I think is fascinating, Coach of the Year. Who's your Coach of the Year right now? Let's start with MVP.
Coach of the Year is who I'm going to write about next week in Detroit, in Allen Park, Michigan. I just think nobody's done a better job. And there's like 6 names you could throw in there. Sean McDermott, who you just, the MVP conversation, Josh Allen. There's 6 coaches with an unbelievable resume. Kevin O'Connell, I could go on and on. But who has done more for their team and their city and their franchise than Dan Campbell? And if he doesn't get one in this run with the Lions, it's just going to feel wrong, right? You guys agree, disagree?
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, I can see that. I think there's cases to be made for other coaches, but you're right. I do think one stands above the rest. But Sean Payton doing a great job, Sean McDermott, Kevin O'Connell, Mike Tomlin, they've all made tremendous decisions at some point in this season to put them in the space that they're in. But collectively, for all those points that you just made about doing something specific to for their organization, Dan Campbell.
I think that Sean McDermott's not getting enough love, to be honest with you.
Oh, no, he's not. Not at all.
Like, not even top five right now in odds? Like, what are we doing?
I'm surprised. I think there's like a lot of almost just credit only goes to Josh Allen, which he deserves a bunch, and he should, which is why he's leading the MVP conversation right now. But Sean McDermott is a big reason that defense is holding up really well this year. Especially, this is supposed to be a retooling year. And look at them now. So for MVP,
yeah, who you got?
Are you in agreement with me with Josh Allen, or you think Saquon can pull this off?
I'm leaning Saquon as of this moment, but we got to think about how the award plays out, right? It's voters, right? And it's quarterbacks, right? So Josh Allen's probably going to win it. No problem with that. He's been unbelievable. Like you said, Coach of the Year usually goes to a coach who overcomes, right? The loss of a star quarterback, expectations, right? Kevin Stefanski last year. So that makes a lot of sense. But where would the Eagles be without Saquon Barkley? He makes every single piece of that offense better. He makes Jalen Hurts better. He makes Nick Sirianni better. He makes A.J. Brown better. I mean, that deal in the offseason to get him for $37 million over 3 years, I mean, I know you don't pay running backs anymore unless they're special, but, like, that's the best deal of the decade right now, it looks like, if he keeps playing like this. If the Eagles win the 1 seed, I'm pushing for the running back to break the streak, right? I hate that it's just a quarterback award. I understand quarterbacks are the engine in this league, but I just feel like no one has meant more to their team than Saquon Barkley, and they're starting to get better as the season goes. But Allen, I mean,
if he
not
breaks the
record,
for sure.
Well, you revealed a little early Christmas gift for people listening and for the readers of The Athletic that you are heading out to do a story on Dan Campbell. So
let's go.
Just like everything else you write, will be a must-read. So I can't wait to go through that, and we'll definitely be talking about it on Scoop City, because you will do what you always do, which is you will uncover something that we have never heard before. So we look forward to that story, and we hope that this is just one of many visits here on Scoop City. We're sorry that it took so long to get you here, but... hopefully in a few weeks we'll have you back on,
and we'll chat the next time Andrew Luck does something, or if anything else happens, I'm happy to help on. So, big listener, it's been a blast. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.